myself for an opening statement. Again, welcome to the Subcommittee on Oversight, Investigations, and Accountabilities, our very first hearing of the 119th Congress, titled Eliminating Waste, Fraud, and Abuse at the Department of Homeland Security, addressing the Biden-Harris administration failures. I'm honored to be the chairman of the subcommittee, to be joined by my colleagues, distinguished guests, and experts. I also congratulate Ranking Member Thanadar for his new role. There's a lot of work that we'll be doing in this Congress, and this subcommittee is excited to be on the forefront of assisting in the reformation of the Department of Homeland Security. We'd also like to thank full committee ranking member Benny Thompson for joining us today, who I know is not here. I don't see him, but he'll be here shortly. For too long, the federal government has spent money on programs, contracts, and grants that do not promote the interest of the American people. For 4 years under the Biden-Harris administration, we've all watched taxpayer dollars entrusted with the Department of Homeland Security become subject to waste and abuse. There is no doubt that inefficient and effective use of taxpayer resources undermine our national interest. Under new leadership in the last 2 years in the House, under Republicans taking the majority, this oversight subcommittee did press hard for transparency, offered the Biden-Harris administration solutions that fell on deaf ears. The GAO, the Government Accountability Office, the Office of Inspector General, have also remained providing many recommendations that could have saved taxpayer money and assist the department in mission success. For the last several years, nonprofit organizations like the Heritage Foundation, America First Legal, the Council to Modernize Governance, who will join us today on the second panel of witnesses, have demanded transparency and accountability, but were consistently stonewalled by the government. Today, we will examine some of the rampant waste, fraud, and abuse at the Department of Homeland Security that occurred under the Biden-Harris administration and evaluate solutions. We must defend against such waste, hard-earned taxpayer resources. Failures of the Biden-Harris administration are staggering because the previous administration refused to enforce immigration law. Our American sovereign borders have been in chaos. From 21 to January of 2025, 4-year period, U.S. Customs and Border Protection counted more than 11 million illegal aliens nationwide. Most of these 11 million illegal aliens were released and provided shelter, food, plane and bus tickets, cell phones, and cash by non-governmental organizations known as NGOs who receive billions of American taxpayer money. One Office of the Inspector General report found that DHS, Department of Homeland Security, wasted under the Biden-Harris administration at least $17 million, paying one NGO for unused bed space for illegal aliens in a hotel. That $17 million could have been spent on agent salaries, better equipment for federal law enforcement, or improved training to help protect officers and keep communities safe. In an attempt to shield the immigration crisis from the public, the Biden-Harris administration created a mass parole scheme to fly illegal aliens into the interior of the United States. These schemes were a clear abuse of power that left American citizens, vulnerable communities, exposed to criminals, cartels, and potential terrorists. A notable component of this parole scheme was Operation Allies Welcome, used to bring Afghan nationals in the United States after President Biden's disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan in 2021. Multiple Inspector General reports found that DHS released Afghan nationals into the United States without adequate screening, without adequate vetting, or monitoring, leaving our country vulnerable to a national security risk from those that were coming in. In addition to their failure to protect America's borders, the Biden-Harris administration favored the use of the Federal Emergency Management Agency's, FEMA's agencies, resource to support sanctuary cities and NGO, non-governmental organizations, for sheltering and caring for illegal aliens, monies that otherwise could be used elsewhere, securing our southern border. FEMA's crisis of focus has been worsened by its fragmented approach to disaster assistance, resulting in the Government Accountability Office, GAO, adding federal disaster delivery to its 2025 high-risk list for waste, fraud, and abuse. I want to reiterate that. It resulted in the GAO adding federal disaster delivery, FEMA's disaster aid, to its 2025 high-risk list for waste, fraud, and abuse, which we'll talk more about. Another DHS component that experienced a crisis of focus under the Biden-Harris administration is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA. In the 118th Congress, this committee investigated and uncovered efforts by CISA to pressure social media companies to remove posts by Americans containing, quote, mis, dis, and malinformation, end of quote, related to the COVID-19 pandemic. Republican lawmakers thankfully forced DHS to scuttle their attempts to stand up to this Disinformation Governance Board, as it's called, to further police the lawful speech of Americans online. CISA's focus on censorship instead of its statutory mission to protect our critical infrastructure from cyber threats was misguided at best, nefarious at worst. Either way, the divergence from CISA's intended mission increased the risk to our cybersecurity. Over the last several years, the Office of Inspector General found severe cyber vulnerabilities in Homeland Security's networks, including TSA, ICE, and CBP. President Trump has now augmented our efforts to return Americans to common sense on these policies. He's introduced executive orders to secure our borders, uphold the rule of law, defend against the waste of hard-earned taxpayer resources, and create transparency through the executive branch. On his first day in office, President Trump stated that he would marshal all resources available to prevent unlawful entries across the borders of the United States, to pursue criminal charges against illegal alien criminals, and regain operational control of the border from cartels and smugglers. President Trump also organized the FEMA Review Council to advise and report on potential reorganization of FEMA, leading to potentially, as the President has discussed, more state authority. Refocusing the federal government's disaster response efforts on helping Americans, including by vesting greater power in state governments to perform disaster response, is long overdue. Finally, we must recognize that the executive branch has acted swiftly in recent weeks to undo much of the Biden-Harris administration's waste of taxpayer dollars. The Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, has been instrumental in exposing and suspending, even within the Department of Homeland Security, outlays on DEI programs, duplicative awards, and services for illegal immigrants. Today, we'll examine how under the Biden-Harris administration, DHS failed in its basic mission. We'll also explore opportunities for greater efficiency and cost savings in the Department of Homeland Security all across the federal government. I welcome our members, appreciate the important work ahead of us, and welcome our guests today. Thank you for joining us. I now recognize the ranking member, the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Thanedar, for his opening statement.